Greetings and welcome to this CMDFA mentoring resource. I want to really thank you for being part of this program. It's such an essential program and your involvement is so appreciated. I hope you find these next sessions really helpful just to equip you for both being a mentor and being a mentee and understanding what the process is all about. Christian mentoring is very important. It's closely aligned to the concept of discipleship. It's actually the way that God has chosen to pass on the faith and to grow up people of substance who have the faith. If you think about Jesus and what he did, he actually spent 3 years with his disciples, living with his disciples, doing everything together, in a way understanding deeply what faith means in all the different aspects of life. Now, for most of us, it's very hard to get that experience. Mentoring is a way of actually delivering some of that maturity and experience and growing people in that process. Probably the inspiration for mentoring mostly comes from Matthew 28:18 to 20, those very last words that Jesus said to his disciples. So if we look at that passage, Jesus says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." And we understand from that Jesus is actually sovereign over all the different places that we are, that we do our work, that we do our living. Jesus is sovereign over those places. And Jesus says, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations." So often when we hear that, we think about evangelism, but actually Jesus says, "Go and make disciples." So it's actually a long-term process, and that's the commandment that we've been given, to make disciples of others. The next thing that Jesus says is, "Baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And this is a reminder that actually when we enter the mentoring process, we're not doing it on our own. We're not just two people meeting together. We're actually doing it in conversation in lots of ways with the Trinity, with Father, Son, and Spirit. Then Jesus says, "Teach them to obey everything I have commanded to you." And in lots of ways, that is the content of the mentoring process. The process is about helping each other obey what Jesus has actually taught us, learning what it means to obey Jesus in every aspect of life. And finally, Jesus says, "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age," which is a reminder that we are not alone in that process, that Jesus is actually with us in the process of mentoring. I want to give you a couple of definitions of mentoring from some great resources that will actually help you think about what's different about Christian mentoring in particular. The first definition I want to give you is from John Mallison, and it's this book, Mentoring for Disciples, to Develop Disciples and Leaders. John Mallison is such a wonderful Australian expert in this area. Sadly, he's passed away, but I did a mentoring course with him. He was just inspirational. So John Mallison says, "Christian mentoring is a dynamic, intentional relationship of trust." Some important words there. It's an intentional process. You have to think about what you're doing, and trust is very important, in which one person enables another to maximize the grace of God in their life and service. So we're actually looking at working with God to actually bring out in the other person the best aspects of what it means to express the grace of God. Another great resource is this book by another Australian, Rick Lewis, Mentoring Matters. Rick Lewis says, "Within intentional," there's that word again, "empowering unique relationships, Christian mentoring identifies and promotes the work of God's Spirit in others' lives, assisting them to access God's resources for their growth and strength in spirituality, character, and ministry." And when you hear that word ministry there, the word ministry basically just means service. Where do you serve God? Mostly in the workplace. So how do we actually help the other person to grow so they're best able to express their faith in every aspect of life? Mentoring is really important because, as we've just been hearing, it's actually a commandment. It's actually something we're commanded by Jesus to do. But it's also important for maintaining Christian focus and mission. When Christian students are just starting out in their working, it's such a vulnerable time. We know from statistics that a lot of people fall away from their faith at that time. It's a really critical moment for people to actually get some resources and get some understanding about what it means to be a Christian in the workplace. And there's also the multiplying effect. Jesus actually talks about the process of setting an example so that the disciples will learn from that example. And Paul also twice in Philippians and 1 Corinthians tells people to imitate him as he imitates Christ. And this is the process. You were probably mentored by someone else, and you will go on to mentor others, to disciple others. It has a multiplying effect. It's the way we reach out and deeply grow people to be strong in the faith. There are some wonderful biblical examples of mentoring, which I hope you will pause and look up some of these resources just to hear what the Bible talks about in terms of these experiences of mentoring and how God uses them. So we have Moses and Joshua, we have Samuel and David, Elijah and Elisha, and also Barnabas and Saul, and as he became Paul. That last one is a great example because we find out in Acts we have this subtle process where it turns from Barnabas and Paul to Paul and Barnabas, where actually the mentee rises and Barnabas begins to understand that this person that he's mentoring is actually going to be even more significant than he is. That's actually one of the most joyful aspects of mentoring. I want to show you some of the information that we have about the different stages of becoming a Christian. We have stage 1, which is that first conversion process. And then we have stage 2, which is a learning process. And then we have the actual process of serving in the Christian life. And that's where a lot of medical students are. We find that people often hit a wall at that point in their faith, and some people leave the faith at that point. We need to learn how to go even deeper, to journey inward, to draw on the resources of God so that we can go outward and be able to express faith in all areas of life. Learn those great tools for being able to be a mature Christian. Stage 6 is when you're transformed into love. And maybe you know some mature Christians who actually seem to embody all the gifts of the Spirit, able to express that contentment, that peace, that joy, that love in a really deep way. So mentoring is an important way of helping people just to get through that wall when they're beginning to question their faith and deal with some of the issues of faith.